Welcome to Live Talks, the Dentsply Sirona Implants webcast, directly from the EAO Congress in Vienna. Today, for the first time ever, we will broadcast from Dentsply Sirona Implants Corporate Forum, Inspiration Talks. Inspiration Talks is an interactive lecture forum arranged by Dentsply Sirona Implants at congresses all over the world. Here, experienced and well-renowned lecturers share on their knowledge and inspire the audience. The theme for the Inspiration Talks here at the EAO is Dreams of the Future, where dental professionals can use the latest technology and innovations to achieve the best results for the patient. My name is Mia Jensen. I'm Senior Manager in Clinical Affairs at Dentsply Sirona Implants, and I'm your host at Live Talks today. We will have two webcasts today. Shortly, we will listen to Dr. Mark Ludlow presenting on digital planning and execution from simple to complex. Here he will focus on how the digital implant workflow can increase the outcome for the patients in terms of focus and function and aesthetics. Dr. Ludlow's presentation will be followed by a discussion with the scientific moderator, Dr. Lyndon Cooper, Associate Dean for Research and Head of the Department of Oral Biology at the University of Illinois School of Dentistry in Chicago. He will do this together with Dr. Charlotte Almgren, the corporate moderator from Dentsply Sirona Implants. Earlier today, I interviewed Dr. Mark Ludlow on the possibilities with the digital implant workflow and what it can mean for the patients and the dentists. This interview is already available on the Dentsply Sirona Implants global Facebook page, where you also can see all 4 sessions from Live Talks. In the second webcast today, we will listen to Dr. Marco De Gidi and a presentation on Acuris, a new mode of friction retention based on the conometric concept. We have a large crowd attending the Inspiration Talks today. In fact, it's sold out and people are standing along the walls to have the chance to take part of this event and to listen to the lecturers. So, let's move over to the main stage at Inspiration Talks here in Vienna, where we will listen to the moderators Lyndon Cooper and Charlotte Almgren present and introduce Dr. Mark Ludlow on digital planning and execution from simple to complex.
It works, perfect. And now, I have the honor to welcome a person that I know loves to dream big. Please welcome, directly from Chicago, Associate Dean for Research and Head of the Department of Oral Biology at the University of Illinois School of Dentistry, today's scientific moderator, Dr. Lyndon Cooper. Hey, Lyndon.
Hi, Lada.
It's great to have you here.
It's great to be here.
So, as you understood, we are here to explore dreams in implant dentistry. What did you dream about during your student years?
You know, it was always about dreaming to be the best dentist. I wanted my work to stand out, and I wanted my patients to benefit.
And when was that, your student years? Was it 10 or 30 years ago?
More like 35 or 38 years ago. Yeah.
Wow, you have great experience. And with all that experience you have now, did your dreams come true?
I'm not sure. But you know, I can say that many of my patients have really benefited from what I've learned and what we can do for them. And I work every day to make sure that the students and the researchers we have are trying to do the same thing I dreamt about doing 35 years ago.
And what are you dreaming about today?
Well, most days I think about improving patient care. And as a scientist, we really dream, and this week was very exciting. We got our brand new bioprinter, and in our laboratory we have this little box, and we can take special bio-inks, and we can add cells or exosomes and push a button and create a tissue that's the right shape. And maybe one day that'll be the solution for missing tissues in the mouth. It's really amazing. And then on the teaching side, every day there's a student in the office or in the clinic who needs help and needs direction. And we think about improving the education for students every day at the University of Illinois at Chicago.
Of course you do. And we are very happy to have you here, and I think we are ready to go.
But before we start, I want to test this one more time. Can the audience please answer this question using the card system? Can you envision a day when you present a scan of your patient through your phone, and within 2 minutes, you receive from a company like Dentsply Sirona a proposed implant, abutment, surgical guide, and crown designed by artificial intelligence for you to approve that they will send to you in hours? Do you believe that's possible? If you do, we have an optimistic crowd.
Absolutely. Oh,
Yeah, well, that's
some
okay.
red cards,
The
yeah.
red cards, Dr. Ludlow will convince them otherwise.
So do you have another questions for the audience before we start?
Yes. Today in your practice, are you willing to go back on Monday morning and throw away your wax, throw away your impression materials, your stone models, and go completely digital? Just walk away from it all. About half and
What do you
half.
say about
That's
that?
what I
Half and
thought.
half,
Yeah. Well, the system's working. High tech, low tech, it all meets in the middle.
So, Lyndon, I think you agree with me. We are in for an interesting afternoon together here with this crowd.
It's going to be wonderful.
Yeah.
Dr. Mark Ludlow is working towards a future where digital technology can be harnessed to create better outcomes for patients. He holds firm in the conviction, quoting Dr. Bronnemark, "No one should ever go to bed with their teeth in a glass." He dreams of a dental industry that embraces technology, from artificial intelligence to 3D printed prosthetics with exceptional fit and robotic-assisted treatments. Mark currently serves as implant director at the Medical University of South Carolina. He also lectures widely and works to encourage collaboration and dialogue across specialties all over the globe. His secret to a good life is watching the Yankees beat the Red Sox again and again and again. Please welcome on stage Mark Ludlow.
Thank you all very much, and thank you for that intro. The only sad thing about my dream is the Yankees lost last week to the Red Sox in the playoffs, so that's a very sad thing. But my dental dreams have absolutely come true. The things that we can do today with digital technology, I didn't even think we could do years ago. And even just 5 to 10 years ago, the stuff we're doing now is completely different than we did it then. So I'm very excited to talk to you guys about these things, because what we have in our practices is we have all types of different patients. We've got patients that are simple patients and patients that are complex patients. And with each of these, we want to try to make our dreams a reality. And that's what we're going to try to look at today, is we're going to look at what are the different products, what are the different solutions, what are the different workflows to be able to make these dreams a reality. And we're going to talk about 2 workflows specifically. One is the Immediate Smiles Azento workflow, and the other is the Immediate Smiles digital workflow. Now, the whole point of why these things were developed is they were developed because sometimes doing these type of treatments can be very difficult for us. And we've come up with some processes to help streamline the very difficult parts of these things, because occasionally when we have treatments like this, we can get some sort of outcomes that aren't exactly what we are hoping for. And both of these patients just came into my office just 2 weeks ago, and it's for this type of patient, so that we don't end up in this way, why these solutions were developed. So what are the 2 solutions that we're going to talk about, and the 2 workflows which we're going to talk about? The first is the Immediate Smiles / Azento workflow. And all of these workflows, their basis is in guided surgery and implant planning. It all starts with guided surgery. We take our plan and plan the implant exactly where we want it. And from that point, if we're going with the immediate smiles or a Zento workflow, it's for a single tooth solution. And what we do is we can take that plan and we can go ahead and produce a pre-operative or a pre-surgery custom abutment and a pre-surgical temporary, so that we can easily provisionalize this case, get the implant right where we want it, and very quickly and easily temporize the patient. Coming soon, which if you've visited the booth, you've probably seen this as well, is what's called the Zento. And what it is it's the same process, except it also includes a temporary healing or a custom healing abutment and all the drills and everything which you need to treat a patient coming in one simple box, so that you can just open up the box and go ahead and treat your patients. It's a fantastic solution. Now, what about the complex cases? The complex cases are a little bit different in that we, again, start with our digital planning from a surgical perspective. And at this point, what we're able to do is we're able to plan our stock abutments and our multi-unit, our smart fix abutments, which you see here, and take those files and move them directly to a provisionalization aspect as well, so that we can make the conversion and the provisionalization aspects quite simple and streamlined. Now, how do we do these? That's the whole question, is because we've all got these dreams of how to do these. These are the 3 steps that you can use on any case, whether it's a simple case or a complex case. Following these 3 steps is how we work all of them up. And what it begins with is with scan, plan, and treat. Those 3 steps you can use with any single case that is going to come into your office. So let's look at each one of them individually and look at the principles that make these things successful. So first off with scanning. Now there's 2 types of scanners you can see on that, and the first one I'll begin with is the one that we're most used to using in implant dentistry, and that's the CBCT scan. Now I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because this is something I think is pretty commonplace in all of our practices at this time, but it is patients like this that I find it absolutely invaluable, because this lady came in to me. She's completely a dentulous wearing 2 dentures. She hates them and she wants a fixed solution. And when I'm looking at her from this perspective, from a 2D perspective, I'm loving it. I'm absolutely salivating looking at the bone and thinking this is going to be a great case to do here. Until I start looking at it from the 3D perspective. We go ahead and do what's called the dual scan technique on her. And when you start looking at this, and this is starting, the scan is from her right side and moving to the left. As we start scrolling through her, we can see this lovely bone that looks great on a 2D perspective is nearly non-existent from a 3D perspective. And it is for that reason that I think CBCT is so important. It makes me want to go hug my machine every so often, because you can see the things which you've never seen before in this way. So that's the first scan, and that's the one we're all used to. Now, the second scan is something that probably some of us are getting into, a lot of us are thinking about, and it's how exactly do you digitize your patient? And the most common way of digitizing their intraoral situation is with an intraoral scanner. Now, if you want to talk about dreams coming true, these scanners are fantastic. I got my first scanner about 13 years ago, and I couldn't even imagine doing what you're seeing on the screen from them. And these workflows, if you look in the middle, this is with the Sirona OmniCam. And all these workflows work absolutely streamlined within a system with the Dentsply Sirona experience. Everything can go directly from the OmniCam into all of the softwares that you want. But the genius about all of this is there's a lot of us that don't have that scanner. And if we've already got a scanner, the beautiful thing about all these workflows is it's compatible with all the different type of scanners out there. You just need to be able to get an STL file out of there, and any which one of them will work for us. Now, the biggest question for those of you that don't have a scanner yet is probably this. Well, do they work? Is this something I should get into? And to be truly honest, this has been something that we've been working on for a number of years, and has been the main focus of our research for a couple of years, is looking at the true accuracy of these scanners. Are they good enough? And this kind of began in earnest, and we started looking at a bunch of different scanners. We looked at specifically 6 different scanners in 2015, and we were looking at it from a quadrant perspective and a full arch perspective. And what we saw was this, is back from scans in 2015, from a quadrant perspective, everything was about 46 to 70 microns accurate, okay? Now, from a full arch perspective, it was about 59 to 105. Well, is that good enough? Well, that's the kind of question here. And again, we submit that it is. If you look at what we conventionally use, if you look at your polyvinyl siloxane impression material, according to ADA Spec 19, PVS needs to be at least 25 microns accurate. That means you can get 24 microns of error just right there. The most accurate PVS is about 12 microns. So you've got some error there. And then if you look at the models that we make, it's with stone, and the accuracy of stone is about 50 microns off. So you've got about 62 to 75 microns just the way that we normally do our jobs. So again, we're getting there, but these were from scans from 2015. The interesting thing is if you look at this from 2 years later, this is a publication that is in final review right now, we looked at 7 different scanners and saw that the accuracy got even better to the point of being 33 to 90 microns. So it's getting better with hardware and software updates. And even the most recent one is this one, which we did here. We looked at 6 different scanners, compared it with PVS impressions, and actually looked at real teeth in the mouth, mucosa, everything. And this was the amazing thing, is what we saw was the full arch trueness of teeth. If you scanned all those teeth from side to side of the arch, it was between 25 and 51 microns, and there was no difference between conventional impression making and the scans. So I submit to you that these things work, and they work well. And the bottom line is, it's just not our research that's showing this. If you look at the data, there is a lot of different good research out there that shows how these things can benefit us in our practices. So these things work. But here's the rub. What are the practicalities of these things? If we're going to use this in our office and we're going to scan our simple case or our complex case, what's important to you when you're sitting in your operatory holding your scanner? And for that, I think this is probably the most important thing for me. If you're scanning something like this, where it's our simple case or our complex case, how do you use your scanner to actually scan these things? Because what we did is we looked at this in another study, whereas we looked at 4 of the different scanners that did very well with full arch scans, and we looked at 4 different ways you could actually scan it. Because a lot of times we just get the scanner and we shove it in there and kind of move it around, and boom, we got a model. But these things are developed from math. That's how your models are made. And so how is the best way to scan? And so we looked at 4 different scanners and 4 different scan patterns. And what we noticed when we looked at them was this. You had between a 10 and a 65 micron error, just depending upon how you scanned. So if you're going to scan and you're going to import these things, and we're going to use these for our implant restorations and our pre-op implant work, you need to know how your scanners work. And if you look at all the different scanners out here, these are kind of the main ones on the market. These are what we have found to be the best way to actually scan these things with. So with that being said, what happens if you don't have one? Can you do any of these solutions we're talking about? Well, the reality is you can, and you can do it the way you've always done it. Go ahead and take a conventional impression, pour it up, send it to your lab, because these days, most of your labs out there have lab scanners. You can get it scanned by your lab, receive an STL file that way, and then get that into the software. Because the bottom line, what we're all trying to get, is the end goal of scanning is this. You want your pre-op condition, you want your CBCT scan, and then I would also submit you want to be able to know where you're going through a digital plan. And at that point, you have all the information to go ahead and put it into the planning software and go from there. So now let's move on to planning. When you plan your cases, you have 2 ways you can do this. The first way that you can do this is the conventional way. You can do it yourself. You can plan it in your SimPlant software, do it in your office, do it all yourself. The other one, and this is kind of a recent development, is with the MySimPlant or the Azento workflow, is you upload it all to MySimPlant. Engineers will plan the case for you, and then they will send you a file that looks like this, so you can verify the implant placement and the tooth position, all those different things like that. So 2 very different workflows. But what do you need to know for the planning perspective? Well, there's 2 ways of doing this. The first is for the simple case. And now for this, I have to credit Dr. Lyndon Cooper, because there's nothing that has really changed my life in treating my patients more than what we call the 3-2 rule. And we use this for all of our anterior single implant cases. Now, what is this? What it is you start off with your pre-op condition and you wax up the tooth that should be there. And what you do is you break down that tooth into two very important things. One is the incisal edge, so you can figure out where your angulation needs to be. The other is the CEJ, and what the CEJ does is that helps us plan the position of the implant, because you take that CEJ, you go up 3 millimeters in 2 millimeters, and that's where you plan your implant. And so if you look at it, if you look at our case from the cross section here, you can see exactly where the CEJ is. Go up 3 millimeters in 2 millimeters, and that's where my implant will be planned. Now, why? Why do this? There are many different reasons as to why we should plan our cases this way, and it can be broken down into two things. The first is you will have stabilized buccal soft tissue and interproximal gingival tissue, okay? If you look at these middle papers right here, what they've all shown, the Chen paper, the Nisapakal-Torn paper, and the Cossum papers, is they show that if you place the implant too far forward, you will have between a 10 and a 50% chance of getting facial recession. So that's the first thing, stabilized buccal soft tissue. The second thing is on this lower paper, it gives yourself the prosthetic space to build your abutment out of there and have the running room to be able to build these things. And that has been associated with less bone resorption and remodeling. So that's the simple cases. What about the complex ones? Because these are a little bit different. For this, I like calling this the 3 A's protocol. And what I mean by this is this. You start off with your abutment planning, okay? It's all planned from your prosthetic access, which is the first A. Then you need to make sure you have adequate space and that these things are aligned, okay? With that process, you can plan these much bigger, larger cases. And when you look at it, why adequate space? What happens on these big cases if we don't have adequate space? We've all had this happen, right? Things break. And it doesn't matter if it's metal acrylic like this or it's zirconia or whatever it is, everything breaks if you don't have enough space to do it. So we need to make sure we have enough space. And why do they need to be aligned? Because if they're not aligned, the problem is we can have screw access holes coming all over the place in unfavorable positions for our patients. That's why it's so darned important. So what are the principles here? Start off planning your case and planning the abutments, which you see here. And these are the exact abutments you're going to use. These are SmartFix abutments. And from there, start analyzing the space. So how much space do you need? Well, it really depends on what you're doing, because an overdenture is very different than a metal acrylic case. So you need to plan accordingly to what you're actually trying to do here. And once you know what you're trying to do there, at that point, you can evaluate the space very well. So if we look at our case, again, this is our difficult case. You can see the red is the bone, the gray is the wax up of the teeth. We're going to do a zirconia hybrid at this point. We can look at we're needing to get up into here to get about 12 to 14 millimeters. And we do that with a bone reduction guide, and at that point, it gets us our adequate space. Now, we've got space, now we need to make sure everything is aligned. So when you look at it, we can align all of these in the software. As far as the implant points go, I don't really care where my implants are. As long as they're in good bone, what I care about is the prosthetic access. And if you look at this, there's straight 17 and 30-degree angled abutments on here, but everything is coming out like a picket fence, which makes it very easy to restore. And that's what our goal is. So let's finish this up looking at treating these two patients to finish things off. Now, for our simple case, just as a reminder, we've got our scan, our plan, and then what we're also doing here is we're planning our Atlantis abutment and our provisional crown pre-op, so that before you start this case with the immediate smiles protocol, you have these 3 things sitting there ready to go before you've even treated your patient. At that point, we go to work. We take the tooth out, clean it out, put our guide on, and the most important thing about the guide is making sure you have a nice fit, and it's got to have an exquisite fit, and I usually drill little holes in it to make sure that that thing is seating, but when that thing's down, your implant's going to go where you planned it. So we go ahead and do the surgery with our EV-guided kit. And this is where the genius of the system comes into play, is right here. Is you can actually register the timing of this implant exactly like you did in the software. And it all has to do with that big notch that's on the driver there and the little line that's right there that you can see out of the front of the guide. Once those two things, you spin it down, and when those two things line up like this, you're exactly where you had planned your implant. And at that point, your abutment's going to go in without any problem. And I kid you not, the provisional literally slides on with no issues at all. And we've taken the patient to this area in about 45 minutes flat. It's a very streamlined and efficient process. And the reason why it works is because if you look at our data on the original study of these things, it was because the error rate was only about 300 microns for the entire process, which was pretty amazing. And 11 out of the 17 provisional crowns didn't even need to be adjusted. They just slid directly on. So that way your plan and your reality can be the exact same thing. So when your patient leaves looking like this, they come back after healing, you know you're going to have predictable results. So at this point, you can take the provisional off, and you've got two options to make your crown. You can either use that same file you did before, hit mill and mill out another one, or the other option is to take an abutment level scan and merge that file back with the old file that you designed your provisional off of. And that's the way I tend to do it, is that way. Then what we can do is just design our crown, mill it out, characterize it, place it in the patient's mouth, and then again, you can have a good long-term result. This case is, I think, 3 years old now, and get exactly what you're looking for. So that's the simple case. Now, what about the complex case? So for the complex case, same principles, okay? The first thing is there's our scan, there's our plan, is our review. And now we're going to use the Immediate Smiles digital file format, because what that does is it allows you to export out a file type that tells you exactly where your SmartFix abutments are going to be. And what you can do with this file is you can put it into your software, merge it back with your pre-op plan, and design your provisional from that area. That way you can go into your big puck mill, which is the MCXL, mill it out, and have it ready to go pre-op before you even begin doing your surgery. So here we have her. I put the bone reduction guide on. We're going to take out that posterior bone so that we make sure we have adequate space again. We're going to put on our bone-borne guide so that things will line up and everything will be aligned. Go ahead and drill through this with our guided system. Again, put our implants in, put our abutments on, slide our provisional over. And again, I closed her a little tightly through here, but I wanted to try to get that tissue to drop down a little bit. But you know you hit it out of the park when you finish up the surgery, the patient's still numb and she's putting on lipstick right in front of you. So that was great times. So there she is in her provisional. She heals up, comes back. I did a little gingivectomy there. So there's a little too much tissue on that spot. Take our impression, and what I also do is I also take a digital impression, okay? The reason being is because what I can do with the digital impression is even if I'm making the case off of the physical model, I like taking a digital impression because what I can do is I can take that cast, and that's the only physical impression that I'll take, and merge it with my digital impression so I can build everything off that, and everything is cross-mounted. My provisional is cross-mount with this, cross-mount with the model that I made. And then from there, we can design the tooth setup. We can try it in. She likes it. She wants teeth a little bit longer. Make those changes for the final zirconia. Put that in her mouth, and she's extremely happy. So we can go on this progression from original design to provisional to final to pre-op to provisional to final, and have a very predictable result because we're using the same file over and over. So in conclusion, I hope you can see the pathway to do this is scan, plan, and treat. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Mark.
It's fun. Good job. Thank you.
And Lyndon, I know you can't wait to get the discussion started. But first, I want to remind you all to send in your questions to the email you see on the screen, inspirationtalks@dentsply.sirona.com, or text your questions to the number you see on the screen. So please do that. And while you're doing that, let's start with a question from our hospitality lounge at the EAO.
Hi, my name is Tobias. I want to start with a digital implant workflow. What is the best way to get started?
Did you get that?
That's a broad question. So where do I begin with the digital implant workflow? It really just depends on what you're trying to get out of this and what you're trying to do in your practice. If you're starting from a surgical perspective, again, the surgical perspective versus the restorative perspective, we'll just start from the beginning. But from the surgical perspective, I think the bar none place to begin is with implant planning software, with Simplant or with the MySimplant workflow. It's just because you can do everything you want within that program. So I'd say that's the very first part that you begin. And from there, it's just a matter of trying to figure out what is going to work best for your patients and your practice in your current situation. Because everybody thinks in order to get into digital, I need to go out on the floor and buy $300 gajillion worth of equipment. And while Dentsply Sirona would love that, that's not what we all need. It's a matter of figuring out what you want to do in your practice. It may be something as simple as talking with your lab, having them digitize your models and uploading things that way, all the way to going the full shebang where you're buying a big lab mill and scanners and everything like that. But it's each practice needs to look at what they're doing, what they want to try to achieve for their patients.
So Mark, is what you're saying that if I have a CBCT and an impression of a patient preoperatively, if my laboratory can scan that impression, I can utilize online assistance through Dentsply Sirona to get a model, to get a design, to do the plan you just showed?
Yeah, exactly. You can go that's one workflow. Because again, you don't need to have all this stuff in your office. You just need to use the resources which are available to you. And if you've got a CBCT scan, you've got a lab that can bring this in, bring it into the software, either have the company plan it or buy the software, plan it yourself, and go whichever route works best for you.
Very good, very good. So we watched you do a lot of interesting things today with just 2 cases. When did you find the big change in technology? Because when you were a student back in North Carolina, we had early scanners, and when you were in practice way back, you probably had a CEREC 1, hooked up to like some electrical device.
61, but
yeah,
but
yeah. When did you find the big change? What was it that just flipped everything?
Honestly, I think the biggest change relative to intraoral scanning probably came. It's been very interesting watching this evolution because this has been something that we've been studying now for the past 5 years. And over the past 5 years, the biggest things which I've seen is, when I first got my scanner about 13 years ago, you could take the picture of one tooth, and a little bit of this tooth and a little bit of that tooth, and that was it. But these days, with the software updates and some hardware updates, the accuracy and ease of use has just gotten better and better and better. And honestly, over the past 5 years, I think these scanners are so easy for us to use now that we generally don't take very many impressions anymore. Even 3rd year and 4th year dental students, they cry and throw fits when we have to take impressions.
So you love it, and I love it. Your dental students love it, and it looked like about 2/3 of the audience put the green flag up there saying they're ready to give up wax and impression materials. What's your patient's response to this approach?
The patients love it. And that's kind of a double-edged sword because the funny thing is when you're scanning them, they're so excited because they're not getting all the stuff in their mouth. But the one bad thing, which you'd never think about, is as you're scanning, they're going like this, trying to look at the screen the whole time while you're scanning. But from a patient experience standpoint, I think that's one of the things that you can't quantify with the technology, is because it changes the experience that your patient is getting and creates a whole different experience for them. And what they do is they go back, they tell their friends, they do things like that, and it's a nice marketing thing and a nice practice builder for us and the technology we've leveraged to help really grow our own practices.
So that's the doctor-patient relationship. What can you tell the audience about the doctor-laboratory relationship?
That, again, I'm an ex-lab tech. I was a lab tech prior to going to dental school. So, this is something that's near and dear to my heart. And never before have I we've been able to get something so predictable in a timely and efficient manner as we can now with the scanners and with digital design software. Because what you're able to do with this is you can start with the pre-op scan, digitally wax up that case, and you can carry that through that exact file to all the different steps as you move forward so that you can predictably get the results you're looking for. And plus, we can do things, we merge it with faces so patients can get a look at what they're going to look like before we even start. We can mill out prototypes of that to try in mouths before we get going. And so I think from a laboratory's perspective, that is honestly one of the greatest things for me because it just streamlines every single step downstream.
So one last question then. What's the future of digital technology and implant therapy look like? And let's not go out 20 years. Let's go out 1 year, 2 years. What do you think it's going to be like in the average practice in 2 years with digital dentistry moving into our practices?
Again, I think the biggest spot where we see in a market things moving forward is with intraoral scanners. So I think that's probably the biggest area of growth where the price points are becoming such to where we all can afford it. And as we saw in the accuracy, between 25 and 51 microns for a full arch, that's incredible. So I think more and more and more people are going to be getting intraoral scanners and using intraoral scanners. And I think whether it's from a surgical perspective, working the patient up, or from the restorative perspective with scan bodies, I think that's probably going to be the biggest area that all of us will participate in the next little bit. And the other thing is from the surgical side, if you haven't gotten into guided surgery, oh man, get into guided surgery. That's literally, I've almost stopped doing free-handed surgery just because it streamlines it so quick. I can get the implant right where I want it. And yes, there is some work beforehand where you've got to spend the time on the software and do different things like that. But it makes the patient experience for you and the patient so much better because they're in and out extremely quickly with just a little minimally invasive hole. And it's completely changed the way we do our implants.
Well, I'm sure everyone appreciates your thoughts here.
Yeah, Linda, you said that was the last question. Well, we have a few questions from the audience also. So one is, I think, a simple one to yes or no. So have you thrown away all your conventional impression materials?
Close. I say that just because if you saw in that last case, on the big case, I still took a PVS impression of the final. But you also saw I was taking a digital impression. As soon as that workflow is validated, impression material is pretty much gone. Every time we have to take a physical impression, my assistant's unhappy, I'm unhappy, and there's nothing wrong with physical impressions. It's just we love digitally impressing these things, and there's a lot of things you can do with them, so that it's
green for yes.
Oh yeah, green for yes.
Yeah.
We're very, very, very close as soon as that workflow is completely validated, which should hopefully be here in the next couple of years.
Okay. Any final remarks? We have one other question from the audience also. What is the limit when it comes to units if you want to do a full digital workflow with a scanned impression?
Jaws. 2 jaws.
Yeah, a double arch. Again, that's part of what we're trying to validate now. I can tell, it's one of those things, well, it works in my hands type thing. But we do all the time full arch cases completely digitally scanned, 100% digital from start to finish.
One caveat, right? Verification index.
No, we don't even actually do those.
Really?
Yeah.
So your prototype is your validation?
Yeah, my prototype or my conversion prosthesis is basically my validation, and we use that and then digitally remove that to get our scan bodies and to get our soft tissue things. But again, as far as how many units, that is an area where we're all moving forward. So I'm sure the Atlantis people could comment a whole lot better on that than I am, because I'm kind of that rogue weirdo that goes the full route. But
gentlemen, I know that you will continue this discussion later. So thank you very much, Mark, for this inspiring lecture. And please give him a big hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
So, welcome back to the Dentsply Sirona Implants live talks here in Vienna. Well, this was truly an inspiring session to listen to. We will be back shortly with a second live talks transmission from the Inspiration Talks. There we will meet with Dr. Marco De Gidi, the inventor behind the econometric concept. Dr. De Gidi will present on this groundbreaking new concept and discuss the features and possibilities with accuracy. See you soon.